Within the dim, dusky corridor, I stood, accompanied only by my shadow. Until just a moment ago, I could hear the radio station leaking out from the headphones hanging around my neck. Now all I could hear was noise. That and something that resembled a person's voice. Something had plainly changed. Concerned, I tried putting on my headphones. The crackling, intermittent voice slowly, gradually, began to form coherent speech. It sounded like a press conference held by the president of some country or other. It was an exaggerated voice, affected for speech purposes, and a machine-like interpreter lagging a bit behind. The static made listening difficult, but one could still manage to discern it. It is with heartfelt regret that, today, the Earth will, to an end. When the voice came to a stop, it was greeted with a steady stream of shouting and seemingly meaningless gibberish. Even through the headphones, the blubbering, panic-driven desperation of the audience was all too clear. Beyond the red-tinged window, a large flock of birds had completely blocked the newly risen crescent moon from the deep violet sky, like a horde of black ants. Removing my headphones and shooting a glance at the room I just left, I saw an abandoned video game and a mountain of study guides, both shining orange from the setting sun. What was I doing up to now? I had the impression I was speaking with someone until just a moment ago, but I couldn't even remember who. This has to be some kind of joke. I whispered it to myself, trying to will myself into believing it as I opened one of the windows lining the corridor. I was greeted with a loud, shrill siren, like none I had ever heard before, along with the screaming and ranting of people. The din steadily grew louder and louder, enveloping the entire city. My lips quivered as my teeth clattered against each other. I am alone. There's no one here, and before too long, I'll be gone too. My pulse raced, tears flowed across my cheeks. I don't want to be alone. It's too scary. I put my enclosed headphones back on once more, to flee from the world as it swallowed into its ultimate doom, to attempt to detach myself from it all. The radio was already cut off. All that remained now was static. It's time to give it up. Everything. The moment I whispered it, I suddenly thought that I heard something. Straining my ears, I found it was a voice speaking to me. Then, in a flash, I realized. This was my voice, no one else's. Hey, can you hear me? There's something you still have to do before going. Something you have to tell him, right? I couldn't remember what it was. But for whatever reason, I felt like I understood the meaning behind the warning. It'll be okay, trust me. If you can get over that hill, you'll know what I'm talking about, whether you want to or not. If you stay where you are, you're going to disappear. Hey. I wiped away the tears, threatening to run down my face once more, then took a deep breath. You want to survive, don't you? It was the day the earth came to an end. I planted my foot down upon the undulating ground as hard as I could, just as my voice guided me to. I don't think I'd seen the landscape before me transform so wildly as this ever before in my life. With every step I took, another stoplight was sent flying, another building swayed wildly over its foundation. The air shifted and swirled before me, and my body propelled itself forward through the wind with every breath I took. The intersection was packed with people. The signals and signs had already lost all meaning to them, and the lawless roads were now host to a gaggle of colorful cars, abandoned in assorted unlikely locations and angles. Some people were screaming something or other. Some were punching and flailing at their fellow man. All of them looked petrified, wailing pitifully at the end of the world. The screaming infant I heard for just a moment almost made me stop running. Keep going. This area is going to be all over within 12 minutes, so don't let yourself look back at them. Make a left at the next light. The voice from my headphones, unlike the mad scene before my eyes, was calm and composed, as it matter-of-factly provided navigation. So I kept going, following its directions as I thrust myself forward through the waves of people. I began to wonder how many times in my life I had truly run with all my strength up until now. I led a sheltered childhood from early on, enough so that I was never given a chance to roam free outside. That was because I had an illness. One where I lose consciousness in a completely unpredictable manner. No reason, no warning. This wasn't an illness that flared up all that often. But the problem was I could never recall the exact moment when I fell to the ground. My memory clocked back into action from the point after I opened my eyes. My recollection from before I blacked out would always be hazy and undefined, as if I was having a long, extended dream. Cutting through the crowds, running through narrow alleys, I was ejected into a large, wide avenue.
Turn right here. There's only 1 minute left.
The voice inside my headphones had gradually taken a sense of urgency. Paying no attention to my aching legs, I immediately pivoted myself to the right, only to hear a sound like crumpling metal behind me. I became unable to resist the urge to turn around as I heard the screams following in succession.
Hurry! You have someone you need to see, right? Please.
My consciousness began to grow hazy as my breathing accelerated. I felt my lungs begin to burn. I wonder if I'm going to black out again. Come to think of it, when was the last time I lost consciousness? I grew unable to recall anything at all. How did all of this even happen? Who was I even trying to reach? And yet, I still felt like there was something extremely important waiting for me at the end. That feeling was the only thing that pushed my legs forward. Turning forward, I saw the hill I had been running towards, right in front of me. There was no longer anyone around me. The setting sun, cut off from the view of the buildings up until now, was perfectly visible from here. Its light, bathing the entire world in crimson, seemed like a furious flame, ready to burn everything in sight. Running up a steep avenue, I made it to the apex of the hill, almost out of breath. On the other end of the headphones, the voice that had guided me this far had muttered something to me, but I couldn't make it out. I was too focused on catching my breath once more. I imagine it was just about the time I was told everything would expire, fading into oblivion. Or maybe that time had already passed long ago. But at the top of the hill I had clambered up, there was nothing. To be more accurate, there was a massive sky spread before me, drawn atop an equally massive wall. No, this isn't it. I felt a tremendous sense of discomfort. There was something that should be here, exactly what I couldn't quite remember. But it wasn't. My ragged breath gradually returned to its normal rhythm. As it did, the cause behind this discomfort faintly began to grow clear. It wasn't that something wasn't here. It's that she wasn't here. And I thought I could finally tell her, too. The words unconsciously fell from my mouth. My shadow, long and stretched out over the ground, began to dim. The sun was almost completely below the horizon.
I guess this was doomed from the start. This was the last place left. The only place I could have ever told her. And now...
The words coming from my headphones seemed to speak from my own mind. A mind still unable to recall everything. Everything's already over. It's just... everything. All over. It's time to give up. I will never have the chance to see her again. I was already aware of that. If this is the kind of world I'm doomed to live in, then... You don't have to say that, do you? Maybe you weren't on time, but at the very end of it all, you came to realize where your own emotions lay. By the time I turned myself around, the city was experiencing its final moments. On the other side from the enclosed sky as it crumbled to the ground, I left my final words to her.
I'm sorry, Takane.
I gazed at the carcass of the program as it burned itself away, my consciousness growing faint. The words I heard from the other side of the headphones were more than enough to lull me back to sleep. Did my last words make it through? I no longer had any way of knowing, but they must have. It felt like they did. I felt oddly strange, as if I was flying through the sky or was suspended in a body of lukewarm water. Indeed, as if I had just woken up from something or other. My near-exhausted breath, my legs racked with pain, the sense of drowsiness that seemed to forever frustrate me. I didn't feel any of it now. Did I die, I wonder? Is this seemingly infinite darkness what the afterlife is supposed to be? I had imagined something a bit more like a fairy tale, somehow. God must have fallen asleep at the wheel. He could have at least turned the lights on for me. This is making no sense at all to... Huh? What? Whoa, I can talk. And I have a body, too. I patted down my body from head to toe, but it seemed I still retained full control of my body and voice. Okay, so where am I, then? It doesn't seem like I'm locked up in a box or anything. Was I just having some kind of weird dream up to now? I suddenly recalled my dramatic, frenzied memories from before. The city in a state of chaos, the sky crashing to the ground, the voice, my second self, that suddenly rang out between my ears. The mere recollection brought goosebumps to my skin. Then I realized I was capable of having goosebumps after all. Weird. Why did all that bizarre stuff happen to me anyway? I can speak, at least, but I don't feel like I was breathing at all. I can touch things with my body, but I don't feel any warmth from them. If this was proof that I'm dead, maybe I just had to accept it and move on. But there was one thing I just couldn't understand. What had happened to me before all this? Before I woke up in that hallway? I'd experienced that feeling multiple times before now. The feeling that I've woken up after suddenly falling asleep. There were absolutely no memories I could recall from before I found myself in that hallway. I had probably lost consciousness due to my illness before waking up there. This had happened to me time and time again, so it wasn't anything particularly surprising. But things were a lot different after I woke up this time. I had never experienced any of these dreamlike events before, and I certainly never found myself wandering in utter darkness. This is making no sense at all. Where the hell am I? Hello? Hello? Is anyone around? I don't know if my shouting had triggered it or not, but suddenly a square object resembling a TV screen floated up from the darkness. The screen showed a seemingly infinite number of monitors, as well as a ceiling lined with wires that seemed to snake across each other like living creatures. Whoa, where'd this come from? What is this stuff? Are those TVs? Approaching it to take a closer look, I realized that it was actually a dark room, something resembling a laboratory. Every one of the individual monitors displayed a numerical readout of times and parameters and so on. Perhaps the square frame I was watching the room through was just another monitor inside the lab. Not that I had any way of confirming even that. Total darkness surrounded me. The room I could see through the square, window-like screen was the only thing left in my world. I still couldn't help but wonder what was going on in the world from before. I was stuck with the impression that the world I lived in had collapsed like some sort of papier-mâché model. And in the end, I still had no solid idea why I felt so driven to communicate, whatever it was, to whoever it was. It's too dark to see much, but I think someone's talking. My perception of the room was limited. The light from the displays was the only thing illuminating it. But, while only softly, I could make out some sound from my square window as well. This one looks like a success anyway. I wasn't expecting results like this on the first try. The year I spent preparing for this certainly seems worth it now. The voice, audible only by bringing my ear up to the screen, belonged to someone I knew very well. Mr. Tateyama? What's he doing here? I changed position to peer as deeply into the window as I could, straining to see who the voice belonged to. The volume bumped itself up just a bit, enough to make the sound fully clear and discernible. The dimly lit room as well gradually brightened up to the point where I could see everything clearly, as if my eyes had grown used to my surroundings. But what I saw unfolding before me was a sight I had trouble believing. Deeper inside the darkened room was a large device, something resembling an X-ray machine. There was a white, circular gate put in place over a sort of bed, neatly straddling the middle of it. I saw several buttons, as well as a readout that looked like a heart monitor without any needle. Cords snaking out from the gate had been attached to the body lying in the bed from head to toe, as if plugged into outlets previously installed on it. Wait, is that me? The person in the bed had to be me. I was in a white outfit like the clothes you were given in a hospital, and a headphone-like machine was placed on my head. What's going on here? I'm supposed to be right here. Then I realized. This isn't what happens when we become like a ghost, is it? My consciousness is definitely right here with me, but there's no mistaking my body either. And that's on the bed right over there, which means... Oh, no way. Am I really dead? Oh, man. I fell to the floor at the shocking sight. Then, ridiculously, I mulled over the notion that I could still do something like fall to the floor in this situation I found my consciousness in. How could I have ever known that I would become a ghost? Something you never would have convinced me to believe in no matter how hard you tried. Maybe that girl who paid the classroom a visit during the school festival really was a ghost after all then. But that guy with her said it was psychic powers or something, didn't he? Either way, I was forced to accept that the supernatural really did exist after all. But what was more remarkable was how calmly I seemed to take all this. I was surprised, yes, but my death apparently didn't mean I was rubbed out of existence. I was right here thinking to myself and perceiving the world around me, so there was no doubt that I still existed, at least. But what should I do now, though? That was definitely Mr. Tateyama's voice. He's got to be somewhere in there. Maybe I could get him to notice me somehow and help me out. I brought my attention back to thoroughly examining the room. I thought I heard the voice from my right side before, but... I pushed my face to the square window as closely as I could, doing my very best to gain a view of the right side of the room. That rewarded me with a clearer view towards the right, previously a blind spot from my original position. There was an enormous water tank, or really a blown-up version of the formaldehyde tubes you see in science class. Mr. Tateyama was standing in front of it, but I was stunned less by his presence and more by what I saw inside the tank. Haruka? I thought I saw Haruka for a moment, but the figure inside the tank was different from the Haruka I knew. Just like myself on the bed, tubes were attached to his body as he floated aimlessly, head down, but his hair was white, his eyes a light shade of pink. Is that Konoha? The persona Haruka made for himself? But why? My mind had ground itself to a halt upon experiencing all these unreal revelations, exposed one after the other. Why was I dead? Why is Konoha over there? And what is my teacher even doing? I was still having trouble gathering my thoughts when Mr. Tateyama's voice rang out from behind the window. Anyways, the key is now firmly in my grasp. Now I can open up the next Kagerou Daze. But Konoha, you still haven't. Suddenly he was cut off, as the square window erupted into what looked like a vast sandstorm. I put a hand on the window, wondering what it was. Then I saw that the silhouette of my hand, illuminated by the dim light, was gradually crumbling away at the edges, like a video image dissolving into a blocky mess. What's going on? My body's gonna... The next moment, the word remove flashed across the countless displays on the other side of the window. Remove? What, right here? Not aware of what the message meant exactly, I quickly decided it was ordering me to remove my clothes. I did so as much as I could possibly muster, given that my life apparently depended on it. But nothing changed at all. So what was the order all about? No, this isn't doing anything at all. Oh my god, my feet are gone, and my chest. Not that I had much down there in the first place, but... As a bystander in someone else's dream, I looked on as my body dissolved before me. I was now completely baffled. But, probably, this meant I was going away. For good this time. I suppose this means I'm not going to wake up in bed at home, in mortal danger of being late for school again. No, probably not. As my mind dwelled on silly details like that, my body wiped itself away to the point of almost complete extinction. I whispered, "Oh God," to myself helplessly. But it was all for naught. The next moment, there was nothing but darkness before my eyes. Oh, my poor girl. You've already lost your body. What further point is there to living now? Oh great, my body really has gone away. I mean, I figured it had, but still. Even if you want it back, there's no place left in the world for you now, you know? Well, I'll make one then. I can carve a niche for myself anywhere I feel like it. It'll be fine. Well, someone's acting a tad too big for her britches, isn't she? That's just how badly you want to get out of here, isn't it? Of course. I mean, I have no idea what's going to happen to me here, so... Well, girl, if you want to get out, then open your eyes. What? Like, who are you, even? The moment I attempted the task, my eyes began to grow searing hot, as if they were burning in their sockets. At the same time, a bolt of lightning crashed across the darkened world. I was blinded for a moment. The next thing I knew, there was a login screen in front of me. To me, this was the most familiar sight of all. Huh? This must have been what it meant, I guess. Okay then. Better find a place to live for starters. Someplace where I won't be too bored would be nice. With my usual speed, I typed my password into the screen. Welcome. With the relaxed joy of someone who had just awakened to full consciousness, I dove into the sea of text. A blue compass began to spin wildly. A sky of zeros and ones spread out above me, dotted here and there with birds of pure lightning. And thus, the tale of my long, long journey through the world of computers began.